Okay. Hello, it's Monday morning. It's gonna be a beautiful, gorgeous day today. Shame I don't have a happy subject to speak about. Last week on the ABC on Tuesday, the ABC started the day with a story: the therapeutic systems where kids fall prey to child sex abusers. For 1 million per child a year, you'd expect unlimited opportunity, stellar care and opulence. Indeed, governments are at pain to convince taxpayers that group homes for children in state care are therapeutic trauma-informed facilities. But the ABC has unearthed cases of a senior worker contacting a child sex abuser as part of a safety check on a child, current sexual exploitations of a girl at risk of death, and one department's attempt to avoid responsibilities for decisions that led to assaults. And this story, how can I put it, stresses on the sensationalism of sexual abuse. They always stress on the sensationalism of sexual abuse. I guess you got to sell newspapers. That's not a bad thing, but it's not exactly a good thing. But anyway, this story led to, on the very next day, the Children's Commissioner wants governments to act on evidence of child protection report inquiries. Now I have a thing here to play. This is the problem with having two computer screens. Screen recordings.
During the past 24 hours, the ABC has exposed terrible abuse of children who are supposed to be living in therapeutic residential care. That system claims to offer 24/7 in-home support for vulnerable youngsters when they can't live with family, foster parents or kinship carers. Instead, these children are being exploited and in some cases placed directly in harm's way, including being sexually abused, with pleas from family for help dismissed, ignored or dealt with at a glacial pace. I spoke earlier with the National Children's Commissioner. Anne Hollins, thanks for talking to AM. You started your career as a frontline child protection worker. You're now the National Children's Commissioner. Reading that ABC report yesterday, has anything changed in how officials respond to this?
Well, Sabra, it seems that not enough has changed. When I was a frontline child protection worker, that was an awfully long time ago. One would think, with decades of royal commissions and inquiries since that time, that we would have a system that was able to protect the safety and well-being of our children, but we're still not able to do that. And I was really shocked reading yet again how many children are being failed by the systems that are meant to be helping them and keeping them safe.
Does there need to be another inquiry? As you mentioned, there have been dozens over the years, or do we know the solutions and what works right now?
Well, I think the problem is not a lack of knowledge. The problem is a lack of accountability for action. And what I would like to see is that the safety and well-being of children be made a national priority in this country, and that we work together across the Federation to actually finish the job, to implement the recommendations of these many reports and inquiries, including by children's commissioners in every state and territory, and the 5-year long Royal Commission that reported in 2017. That's 8 years ago. You know, we have looked at these issues again and again, and it's time to act on the evidence.
The Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced a new ministry earlier this week. A cabinet-level minister for children was not in that list, despite many people saying he should have one. Should it have been there?
Well, many of us are extremely disappointed that there is still no Cabinet Minister for Children when we've had Cabinet Ministers for Women, for example, for decades. And Women and women's safety is also a priority for National Cabinet, but children are not mentioned on that list of priorities. So there are a number of things we can do to ensure that across the Federation we are implementing evidence-based safety measures for children, and that we can actually fix these problems. They are preventable. That's the thing. We should make child safety and wellbeing a national priority at National Cabinet, because that's where all the heads of the states and territories and the Prime Minister work together on issues of national significance. Clearly, the safety and wellbeing of our children has to be a national priority.
It costs about $1 million for one child a year in residential care, yet many people would find that hard to believe, especially foster families. They struggle to get appropriate money. On that measure alone, is it worth trying to find different solutions to help these children become normal, well-adjusted adults?
Well, I think what we need is some independent monitoring and oversight of how these children are being cared for, whatever the system is, whatever kind of out-of-home care is involved. But we've also got to look at the money that's being put into prevention, Masabra. And reports again and again show that while it's cost $1 million to put a kid in resi care, we're spending like minuscule amounts on intensive early intervention with their families. And I think we also need to be examining how well we're trying to prevent and intervene early to protect these kids and keep them at home with their families, because clearly removing them is not necessarily keeping them any safer. We're swapping one set of harms just for another set of harms, as we've seen in these ABC reports.
Anne Hollins is the National Children's Commissioner.
Okay, let's go back. So, stories on the ABC has actually affected some movement within at least the Queensland government. I believe that this thing will blow up again at some point. Because on Sunday, I was going to make a video on Sunday as I was driving to the shop. There was a story on the news radio. Queensland announces inquiry into broken child safety system that spends $1 billion on residential care. The Queensland government has appointed a former federal court judge to investigate the state's child system. The Children in Care Census 2024 shows that almost a third of children in care have unmet mental health needs. The Queensland government has announced the commission of inquiry into the state's broken child safety system that it says is failing children in residential care at the cost of $1.12 billion. The 17-month inquiry will be led by former federal court judge Paul Anastasiou, KC, who was deliberately chosen for his expertise outside the state, and the government said on Sunday. Queensland Premier David Crisafulli said the inquiry was critical to reforming the system for the sake of the community and the 12,500 children currently in state care. There is no coincidence that we have a broken child safety system and a youth crime crisis in this state, and we're determined to take action on both, he said. I can't stand the Liberal government, but I'm very happy that somebody's actually pointed out the connection between out-of-home care and how that's so horrible that a 12-year-old child feels safer prostituting herself on the streets of Brisbane rather than staying at home in the so-called safe house provided by the government, and how that child at 18 can pick up a machete, kick down somebody's front door, steal some car keys, and go on a 6-hour crazy car chase that we all see on the news, that the government also uses that news footage to justify a crackdown on crime. And in Queensland, I think they're building 2 new youth detention centres. I'd also like to point out that if we raise the rate of social security to above the Henderson poverty line, maybe families wouldn't get to the point where their children end up in state care, but that's a totally different issue. I'm just very happy that the government points out the connection between the way it looks after the children in its care and the prison system, and the growth of the prison system and the growth of the children in care system. But in the past 6 months, Child Safety Minister Amanda Cam said the government had uncovered new information that warranted a full independent investigation. The information isn't new, by the way. Report after report after report after report after report. I'm sure we all said this at the Royal Commission. I'm sure I went on about the continuous reports sitting on the shelves of government officials with the solutions to these problems within those reports that the government refused to pick up and read. This inquiry that the government's announcing today is designed to quiet the media down. When this inquiry is finished, the results of the inquiry will be given to the government, and I doubt that it'll even be tabled in Parliament. It'll just sit on the shelf of the minister for a lifetime until somebody like me complains, and nothing else is going to happen. I was in care in the 1980s. The story that started that inquiry is about a girl who her parents asked the government for help. The girl ended up in out-of-home care. The girl ended up getting abused by a male abuser. The government knew this was happening, did nothing to stop it, basically justified it and let it happen. All the time, the mother's going off her tits about her daughter and the danger her daughter's in. All she wanted was help from the government. Yes, life's not bad. Life's not good, and children don't end up in care for nothing. I didn't end up in care for nothing. My mother asked the government for help in the 80s. I was put into dangerous situations. Because of those dangerous situations, I left those situations and ended up prostituting myself on the streets at the age of 13. So, year 2025, a 12-year-old girl, she's 18 now, so that was 2019, we have a 12-year-old girl prostituting herself on the streets because the streets are safer than the family group homes that the government are paying. In this case, I think it's a private corporation, but usually when it comes to out-of-home care, it's MacKillop Family Services or it's Anglicare. In Queensland, it's a whole heap of other people. When you look at all the charities involved in this industry, a lot of them tie back to MacKillop Family Services. So to give you a case in point, I was a state warden in Victoria in the 1980s when Jeff Kennett made it impossible by Act of Parliament to sue the government for being in their care. His throwback to kids that were in care was he set up something called Open Place. Open Place is paid for by the Victorian government, but it used to be, they used to subcontract it to MacKillop Family Services, who ran it. Eventually, the people like me who were using the services of Open Place said we can't have a situation where the same people who looked after us as children. By the way, in the 1980s, MacKillop Family Services was Sisters of Mercy Family Care and Mercy Family Care. So you'd probably know more about Mercy Family Care Centre in Queensland. Their head office is the exact place where I was staying as a child in North Geelong. Which is the Stella Sisters of Mercy Nunnery. It's one of the most expensive pieces of real estate in all of Geelong, and it was built by orphans. Geelong has a very long history with out-of-home care. It had more orphanages than any other city in Australia at one point, and the history for this horrible system that we have goes all the way back to those early orphanages in Geelong. So you've got Christian Brothers, which is St Augustine's. You've got Mercy Family Care Centre, which is Sisters of Mercy, which are now MacKillop Family Services. You used to have Glastonbury, which is, I'm not sure who Glastonbury is. It's either Church of England or some other weird setup. But yeah, in the 1980s, people were making millions and millions of dollars. I was an excess of $300,000 a year child in the 1980s. The people who are making money now are the same people, and the abuse happening to the children is the exact same abuse. In the case of Mercy Family Care Centre, for me, it was child-on-child abuse. By the time I was in Baltara and Tirana, it was staff-on-child abuse. It's so bad that when police pick these children up, they don't take them back, because why would you take a child back to hell? For the police, what's the solution? Now, here's the other thing I really want to stress. A couple of years ago, the Minister for Children's Services in Queensland, or whatever the title is these days, they change it all the time, said quite openly on the news, there is nothing wrong with the child welfare system within the state of Queensland. This was a Labor minister. And when you actually look into it, you could understand why she thinks that. All she does is approve a lot of money to a lot of organisations to achieve goals. Those organisations are meant to achieve those goals. To give you a point, they talk about a $1 billion system. Every one of those children has on average $30,000 each for extracurricular activities. That $30,000 is to pay for staff to take them there, to pay for the extracurricular activities, to pay for any equipment they may have. Up to $30,000 per child. That money is never spent on that. According to the report that they're talking about, 87.9% of all children who are meant to have case plans have case plans, which is a lot higher number than what I actually thought it would be. But those case plans include they're itemised when it comes to stuff like that. So you have a set amount of money to get the children to school. What's the needs of those children? What do we need to? Who do we need to hire, and what staff do we need to hire? One of the problems that we have is these organisations don't want to train anybody. They want to take the money from the government, but they don't want to actually put anyone through university or train any staff to work with these children. They expect that's the government's job. It's the equivalent of Ford Motor Company wanting 1,000 people on the assembly line, but expecting the education system to train those people to work on that assembly line when it's actually Ford's job. And that's how you end up with no trained staff to actually do this job, because the people making the money from the government aren't training any staff, and the government don't have a picture of that in their head, because they're paying people to train these staff. They're paying people. They're paying for the staff to be there, trained to look after these high needs children. It's the organisations that the government's paying, usually charities. These charities are run by churches, so places like MacKillop Family Services is the Catholic Church. One of the things these things don't say is out-of-home care is one of the biggest money makers for the Catholic Church. It has been for the last 150 years. Look at all the property that the churches have, and then ask you who built all the buildings on them. Look at a lot of private schools now are in ex-orphanages. The religious organisations that used to own those orphanages now own those private schools. Sunbury is a perfect example of that. I have a friend in Sunbury. I went to visit my friend in Sunbury. There's a big private school in Sunbury. It's one of the biggest properties in the whole town. And the moment you look at it, you realise it's just like St Augustine's in Geelong. Ballarat's the same. These towns have horrible histories in all of that, but nothing's changed. I'd like to ask anybody who's ever had anything to do with out-of-home care at any point in their life, who can explain to the government how out-of-home care has led to the destruction of their lives for the entire length of their lives. I'd beg you to please put a submission in to this Queensland government inquiry. That's all I've got to say for today. Everybody have a good day, and as always, if you're entitled to the redress scheme, which is finished soon, chances are you'll win a civil lawsuit. Please go and see decent lawyers. Arnold, Thomas and Becker, if you're in Victoria, is one of the best law firms you could see for this issue, but there's plenty of others. Everybody have a good day now. Goodbye.